What is up, guys? Kaizan here. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the C-17 Globemaster and going over a little bit of information with it, because there's not a whole lot of YouTube videos that really explain the C-17 Globemaster and how everything functions. I have found a couple of decent ones on YouTube, but they kind of breeze through a lot of stuff really quickly. This one's going to be a completely full, in-depth review, along with doing everything with your EFB. So, first things first, I have at the top left the Globemaster that is selected for the C-17A. Some of you guys may not be able to see it because when you first come in and you're looking through, it doesn't have the correct default livery on it. Currently it does show the correct livery, but if you click it and you hit configure, what you might end up seeing is, instead of the default, if you go into the livery, it may look like, wait for it to load, like this. Not really something that I would see as being a military aircraft, so I don't really like that setup. I like the default skin a lot more. In this page, we can also go to the fuel and the payload, and we can manage the mass of the passengers, cargo, fuel, and normal aircraft mass in the EFB. We can also manage fuel here, which fuel shows as yellow, but currently we're at 109,802 pounds out of maximum, so we're halfway there for the flight we're doing. I'm not going to be too concerned about it. So let's take a look at the departure and the arrival runways. Now, what you can kind of do on this side, if you don't know the codes for all your different runways, what we're going to do on mine is we're going to go a flight that I kind of know. We're going to go around here. We're going to go to Hampton, Virginia. We're going to go to Langley Air Force Base. So you can click on Langley Air Force Base and pretty much set as departure. So now that is our departure. Where we want to go is all the way in Florida to Tyndall Air Force Base, which I know Tyndall Air Force Base is around here. So we're going to click Tyndall Air Force Base, and we are going to set it as our arrival. So, gives us that nice little line, but it doesn't really explain a whole lot. Next thing that you kind of want to do on this side is up at the top left, instead of runway 26. We don't want to go to runway 26. We want to start from a parking ramp for cold and dark. So parking 29, ramp mil cargo, not ramp military combat, since we are not a fighter jet. Next, we're going to go to the EFB tab. This is going to be the bane of your existence for a long time. You're going to go on here is your route, right? So we have the departure airport is KLFI, Langley Air Force Base, departing runway 26. We do have our cruise altitude set at 100 for flight level, which if we change this to feet, it is basically 10,000 feet. So flight level just takes off two of the zeros. What we're going to be looking at on this one is, let's just say we want to be at cruising altitude of flight level 200, which is 20,000 feet. Next, departure procedure, VFR pattern via straight. We can change that procedure because I don't really like that procedure. So let's take a look at doing left 45 auto, right? And we can hit change procedure. That shows on there. If we go back to our route, I know this is looking all kinds of weird with the aircraft being over there. So let's jump over to this side. So what we're going to look at is how we're going to do things is we're going to take off of runway 26. I know it's weird because it doesn't show it on that, right? And then we're going to go to Fundy, then Zombie, initial climb, pattern 1, and then exiting pattern 1. And that's that 45-degree left that we'll be taking out from, right? And then, of course, you have your magenta line that goes all the way to Tyndall. Now, currently with Tyndall, what we have set up is it's saying that it wants us to land on runway 32 left. Now, it is showing a teardrop entry into the pattern. That would be for normal VFR or visual flight rules. If you are flying this monster of an airplane, you are not a Cessna 172. You're probably not going to be flying off of visual flight rules. You're going to be flying off of instrument flight rules, otherwise known as IFR. We'll get to the points on that one as well. So we have a route that's there. We're not going to put in the route yet or find the route yet. Approach procedures. This is the one that you're kind of going to be taking a look at. It says VFR pattern via left teardrop. I don't want to do that. So let's change the procedure. It does have an RNAV for 32 left. If I wanted to do an RNAV, I do not like RNAV because that's for radio navigation. I like to have ILS for instrument landing. So what we can do instead, it says that it wants us to land on 32 left, but you know what? Let's go ahead and land on 32 right instead. Well, looky there. 32 right does have an ILS, 32 right Yankee. Yankee is kind of your TACAN that's going to be going through there. Now, we can change it to Yankee, or we can change it to Zulu, whatever we want. We can also do a localizer. We can do an RNAV for it as well, but we're going to do an ILS landing. Let's stick it with keeping on Yankee, and we're going to do Susie, right? Now, you say, well, what are all these different things? This doesn't make any sense, right? So you have on this one, if we want to do direct, right? What it does is it basically puts us to Wudom, right? To Selly and down to the runway 32. Now, if we do our missed approach, it's going to bring us to Pimley, and then it's going to have us fly back up to Susie, and then we're going to do a kind of 180 degree turn, and then pretty much try and come back in on Susie anyways. So if we set it to Susie, what it's going to do is it's going to have us hit Susie first. Then it's going to have us do this archway into Sesbu, then to Wudom, then to Selly, and then to runway 32 right. This makes things a little bit easier because you're coming in from a longer area, and that way you can catch your glide path a little bit better. So we're going to hit change procedure on that side. Now, if we go back to the normal route, and then we zoom in, look at that. Our magenta line is basically saying we're going to hit Susie, then we're going to go to Sesbu, Wudom, Selly, then we're going to hit 32 right. If we miss our approach or basically need to go around, then we're going to hit Pimley. We're going to go back up to Susie. We're going to do that little 180 turn, and then we're going to hit back on Susie, go to Sesbu, go to Wudom, go to Selly, and then pretty much keep trying and trying again. After we got that all taken care of, right, we are going to find a route. Give it a minute for it to be able to find a route. Sometimes it doesn't even find a route, and it's just kind of what it is. So you can file flight plan with ATC, send your route to the avionics, and if we file with ATC, maybe at that point we can actually find a route now. Nope, still won't allow us to find a route. Let's see if we add an arrival, if that will change anything. Nope, we just have to direct. Kind of try and find a route again. Nope. Sometimes it allows you to find a route through it, sometimes not. So we're going to go into the next tab, going down the line. Flight rules is IFR. Registration, we don't care about that. Airline, we don't care about that. Flight number, who cares? ATC call sign, I guess we can do Reacher 17. Flight date is today, and what time is it? It is roughly around we'll do it at 1 p.m. off the block time. You know what? Let's change that to about 1:30. Enter nav com equipment, right? So you can do a builder, you can just say standard equipment. Transponder, I do pretty much every single airplane has a mode C transponder. That shows your squawk and also your altitude. Flight type, you can just say scheduled or you can say military. So we're gonna say military, right? So that's all looking good. Let's go back up to the route, see if we click find route, if anything pushes through. We're doing that. No. So nothing's changed for there. Now we're looking at our payload options, right? We're going to say for passengers, we have, 3 passengers. And I don't think it will allow us to put in 3 passengers. Don't really have very much option there. Cargo. Who knows? Let's see. So we have our maximum total weight, as you can see on the left, is 585,000 pounds. The empty weight is 282,500 pounds. The estimated takeoff weight is there. Ramp weight, estimated landing weight, and the block fuel is about 159 pounds for there. So let's see. We'll say 50,000 pounds. Total payload is about 50,000 pounds. That's good to go. Let's go to the gas now. So we got gas. Taxi fuel is about 10 pounds. Trip fuel is saying that it's going to be about 112 pounds. Contingency fuel, you can leave it to auto. Sometimes for the rules, you can say FAA rules, which it would say only about 3 pounds, but you can leave it to auto. It'll give you a little bit more pounds in the tank, right? So we have that there. Let's take a look. This is the navigation log. You don't really need to worry about the true airspeed as it's going, but this shows a good way of kind of how we're doing stuff. So runway 26, going to be taking off runway 26, going to that initial climb, going to the pattern 1, going to Susie, Sesbu, Wudam, Selly, runway 32 right. Now, let's go over to these charts. Right, so you have this flight, and then you have save charts. So for this flight, currently, we don't really have a whole lot. We only have an airport facility chart and an airport ground chart for KPAM, which is Tyndall. So let's go back up to the route. You're going to pick this icon for CLFI, for Langley Air Force Base. And now it gives us a bunch of information, right? So it gives us the position, gives us the elevation, which is about 13 feet. It is a large-sized runway. We do have the weather. The weather is, I like the breakdown of the summary versus the METAR, because I'm not as good as a pilot to really recognize everything in here. And then you also have your TAF, which your TAF is your terminal area forecast. This is only updated every once in a while, whereas your METAR is pretty much updated at the runway itself. So we have winds 7 knots from 80 degrees. So if we have winds at 7 knots from 80 degrees, well, why wouldn't we use runway 08 instead of runway 26? Runway 26 would be 260 degrees. Runway 08 is, 80 degrees. So if we got wind at 7 knots at 80 degrees, I want a headwind coming in for here. And if I can do a VFR pattern, and we're going to do a right auto, which that's going to take me off here. And we can change the procedure there. Now, if we take a look at the route, what it's going to have us do is take off from runway 08. We'll do the initial climb, the pattern 1, and then we'll crank hard towards Susie. Alrighty. So we have that loaded in now based off of our information here. Visibility is about 8.69 nautical miles. Clouds clear. Air pressure doesn't register currently. Temperature is 6 degrees Celsius. We're looking at runways. Runway 08 is the one that is recommended. And it does actually have an ILS here for 109.9. So that's kind of nice. Cool. Frequencies we don't really need to worry about because I'll go through the communication stuff. So we got KLFI good to go. Let's go into here, which these are our charts. We do have a 08 departure, which shows no charts at all. Arrival show no charts. Approaches shows no charts. Airport shows nothing. Miscellaneous shows nothing. So we can't get anything out of KLFI or Langley Air Force Base. So what we're going to do on this one is go back to the route. We're going to take a look at Tyndall now. So weather is 6 knots from 140. So look at that. Why would we be flying in to runway 32 if we have a runway 14? So we're going to switch to runway 14 left. It is an ILS. It is saying via direct, but you know what? Nancy is right here. So we're going to change to Nancy, or Nancy, my bad. And now what our flight is showing is we're going to hit here at Nancy. We're going to go to Buto, Aris, runway 14 left, and then land runway 14 left, where we're looking at. And then if we abort takeoff, we're going to go to Norway, and then we're going to pretty much track back to Nancy and then retry it. Alrighty, so let's go back to Tyndall. So if you click on that one here, what we have, we don't care about departing because we're not departing. We're doing an arrival and we're going 14 left. There's nothing there for arrivals at 14 left. So let's take a look at approaches for 14 left. Would you look at that? We now have an ILS or localizer for the Zulu. And we have a couple of other things there. So we're going to add this to the chart. And at the airport itself, we want the airport ground chart. So that way we can see what the airport looks like when we land. So we can kind of figure out how to navigate the taxiways. So now if we go to this button here, in this flight, we have everything here. Now, it says ILS or localizer Zulu for 14 left. Well, we're currently on Yankee, so we don't want to be on Yankee. We want to be on Zulu to Nancy. So, we have that taken care of. Let's take a look at the ILS localizer page. Lot of stuff going on here that's kind of confusing for anybody who's not a pilot. Things you need to be concerned about. Over on this top right where it says ILS Zulu or localizer Zulu for 14 left, you're going to be tuning into the radio station of 111.5. Nancy is right here, and it basically says that you need to be at 4,000 feet to be able to catch Nancy. Then you have to be at 4,000 feet for Buto. It is 138 degrees. You are looking at 1,600 feet for Ares. And we don't worry about Kootenai. Now, down here, what you're looking at. Cat 1 is 220, so that's kind of the elevation that you should be at. Now, for this one, for the C-17, it's not... I haven't been able to find where you put in that 220, so most of the time you don't really need to worry about it. I found that it still goes down pretty decently. You do have a glide path of 2.5 degrees, which we will be putting in as we get later on. And yes, I know this is a lot of information, and it's like, why can't I just fly the plane? And no, not with these bigger planes. You cannot just fly the plane. You have to know anything and everything. So, now we got that kind of set up and figured out. Okay, so another thing that we're going to do, file plan with the ATC again, send route to avionics. You always want to make sure that's all set up and good. We're going to close out of that. We're going to go and start flight. All right, so we are here looking at the aircraft. Now, there isn't really anything for inspections. There's no chocks that are on the ground. There's no plugs that you need to remove. It's pretty much just get in the cockpit and go. So, the door is over here, says crew entrance. You're going to open that door. You're automatically going to be placed inside of the cockpit. Next thing that you need to do is you need to hit the tab button. The tab button brings up your electronic flight book, or your EFB, right? The huge thing that we're looking at right now in this EFB, and, you know, excuse the wiggling of the screen because I am doing head and eye tracker for this kind of stuff, so I don't have to be pressing buttons to look around. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to this bottom left for the aircraft. Then we're going to go to checklist. Now, this eye icon is very great. So with the gear handle down, we can look over. Gear handle is down. Engine ignition normal. It's going to bring us up to this top page, and this is kind of a nice view to be able to see everything. There's a lot here, so I recommend just going through the checklist to get everything squared away. It's currently an override for the engine ignition override. It says switch to norm. So we're going to switch it to norm. I don't like it that when I do the switches, it doesn't check it off like I want it to. Engine ignition selector, so making sure the switch is off. I don't know why it doesn't. Some of these don't do like the eye icon. This is your engine ignition. This piece here, it isn't off. Engine shutoff switches. Off, 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 and off. So that one's good. Ground ops power switch is in off. Battery switch is over here. Turn it to on. It's going to come up with a lot of this information here. These are all your ICAWs is kind of what we call them. Pretty much warning systems that are saying what's going on. So battery switch is on. DCX tie needs to be in auto. Even though it looks like it's in the auto position, as you hover over it, it says off. So you need to pull it up to off and pull it back down to auto. Emergency power switch needs to be set to auto. Currently in off. Bring it to auto. Transfer buses switch. We're going to be putting that into norm. Left and right AV bus switches. We're putting those into auto. They currently show as off, so just kind of resetting them. WAP. They call it the WAP, the warning and caution displays. This is your WAP, the big thing at the very bottom that is lit up with a bunch of stuff. We don't really care about that at the moment. External power switch to the on position. So you can see on this, it says external power available. We're going to put it on. Then you're going to hear everything kind of go in. Fire detection system test. So if you do want to go through this whole thing, you can.
APU fire. Fire number 1 engine. Fire number 2 engine. Fire number 3 engine. Fire number 4 engine.
And once it got back to the fire number 1 engine, we can turn that one off. So that one's good. Smoke detector system test. We're going to look up to here, and we're going to push it to test. We see all these. We're going to bring it back to arm. Now, before we continue with the rest of this checklist, one of the things that they don't tell you is for the fire detection system to detect anything, you have to turn all of these on. So we are going to turn all of our fire detection on, so if there is a fire, it'll actually detect it. Next up is the AC tie switch to auto. This is here, currently in off. Pull it up, back to auto, turns green. Bailout alarm is over here. Click the switch and turn it off, put the cover back on. Emergency lights. We're doing emergency lights to arm, so those are good to go now. Stall test. Turn it to the left.
Stall. Stall.
Back to off. Second one. Nope.
Stall.
Wrong side. Second one.
Stall. Stall.
Cool. So, stall test is good. Everything's good to go there. Now, I hit shift and spacebar to kind of recenter me back into normal land here. Set parking brake to on. Even if I hit look at, it doesn't look at it. So where your parking brake is right over here, saying parking brake, and it is in the on position. Again, check the WAP display. Cool. A lot of these don't really matter as we keep going through everything. Interior and exterior lights as required. This does pull you up to the general area, but doesn't show anything. So, these down at the bottom are all of your lights. Same thing with the nav lights and the formation lights and the anti-collision lights. We do have the wing lights. I don't know what they mean by RETR. Not sure. There is also a hold, and then there is also an EXT, which I would assume is external. All these should pretty much be in external because they were in the down position to begin with. It's just when you hover over them, they automatically start in the RETR position. So I don't want that. Next thing, we have the right wing is on, left wing is on. That's just because I have landing lights bound to something on my HOTAS. So if I turn it off, these landing lights are off. Whereas if I turn them on, the landing lights are on, right? So, those are good for the lights. Cockpit and instrument illumination as required. So, if I go back into here, all these are really bright. So, on the bottom left here, you can kind of do your scroll wheel. It's a little bit easier. So, if you scroll up, it changes it from day to night, which that makes things a little bit easier to see. On here, you can increase or decrease the brightness. So you hold the left click and then you can scroll it to do that. Same thing for here. It shows is auto on here. You can also increase or decrease the brightness, or you can pretty much just move your knob to nighttime and then it decreases the brightness on its own. You can also put on your Wear headset if you want to. Doesn't really matter too much. Cool, so that one's good. IRU switches. So we're going to turn the IRU switches to on. These are pretty much your navigation switches to be able to run your global positioning system, like your GPS and all those kinds of things. HUD, MCD, and MFDs to on and adjusted. So these are all on, and you can adjust, you know, day, night, and you can adjust for the different displays, right? What you're looking at on this one, just so we can go through the different displays on this. So this is your PFD. This is your primary flight display, okay? You can use it, you cannot use it. I find that, you know, using the HUD at the top can be a little bit difficult, especially when flying into the sun and you can't see anything. Next up, you have your navigation display. So if you click your navigation display, it does show this kind of setup, which once we put everything in, it will have the magenta line going through it. Or you can hit the navigation display a couple of more times, and it shows this, which this shows everything that's in front of you, and it shows the mile radius. Actually, no, this is our magnetic heading right there of 080. So we have that, but you can change the radius, and I'll show you how to kind of expand it or move it. Next, you have the PPI display. The PPI display kind of just shows a full 360 around your aircraft and kind of what aircrafts are flying around you. And you can also set up other stuff on your PPI display to show different things as well. Engine display. You have 3 different versions of this. So you have your EPR, which basically you'll see yellow, green, to fill it up, and you pretty much don't want to be farther past maximum. And it says on this, the rating for maximum is 1.47, which is there in that 1.47 line. And then the limit is the 1.51 that's right there. We click on the engine display again. It basically shows all of our different engines. So engine 1, engine 2, engine 3, and engine 4. This is basically your percentage of your RPM, and this is basically the heat of your engines as well. If we click it one more time, we do have the pressure for your PSI pressure, which is your air pressure of the engines, your engine temperature in degrees Celsius, and then the quantity, and sometimes it even shows like the fuel used and everything like that. If we go back to engine, goes to here. If we go to configuration display basically shows all of our brakes, our landing gear. It'll show our ailerons moving, elevators moving, pretty much like your rudder trim, your nose trim or stab trim, aileron trim, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to move it back to the PFD display. And again, this is for all the other 4, so you can kind of customize to what you want to look at. So we're going to say good. Com, nav, radios. I don't really care too much about the com radios because those will change as we go through the normal com menu. What I do worry about is the navigation. So, in the navigation, what I want to do is I hit that little nav button over here. That's nav. We're going to go back to the flight planner. We're going to go to our stuff. And as we see on here, it says 111.5 for the navigation. This is what we want to input in here. Now, standby on the left-hand side, that's what you're going to be changing. So, big knob, or, knob closest to the actual display, is for changing the big number. Small knob is changing for the number after the decimal point. So we're going to scroll down. We're going to hover over it, scroll down. 111.5. Then to switch it, right underneath this knob, there's here, which is transfer frequency. So I hit transfer frequency. It is now transferred into there. As far as UHF, VHF, HF, IFF, your IFF modes and all this kind of stuff, it doesn't really matter too much. It's just different functionalities for it. Cool. So, now we can go back to our checklist. Common nav is set up. Check pilot standby instruments. These are our standby instruments here. This is how you change your altimeter. So currently the altimeter is 2992, and then that is 1013 for the other form of altimeter, I guess. I'm in America, so we use the inches of mercury. That's what INHG means, is inches of mercury, and that's why it's 2992, which is standard pressure. Cool. ELT switch. Verify ELT switch is in norm. Set it to norm. Fed arm switch. Even if you click the fed arm switch, nothing will pop up. This is your fed arm switch. If you open it here, it is in disarm, and it's automatically in disarm with the cover. So, switch to disarm, that's good. Set OBIGs to on. These are your OBIGs, left and right, on and on. Comped airflow. We're going to look up to here, open this guard, turn it on, close the guard, trim air set to on. Currently it's off. We set it to on. Avionics cool override to off. So if you click it, it's now on. If you click it, then it's now off. WSD fog to on. Alright, WSD fog, we're turning that on. Left and right, WS ice to off. So we're good to go. Engine anti-ice. These are all of your engine anti-ice. So for each engine, 1, 2, 3, and 4, they are all set to off. And then the probe heat is the two on your right that are both set to off. Now, if you want to be fancy with it, you can do the no smoking and the fasten seatbelts, which they are here. You can have them as on, or what I like to do is just set them to auto. And you do have to re-click them to kind of get them set to auto. Anti-skid. So the anti-skid, if I go back here, it's a little bit annoying to try and get to that one because you can't really get to that one. So a trick is, with a lot of this, is Shift and L. Sorry. Shift and L kind of rotates going this way. If you do Shift and D, it moves your camera angle over to this side, and you can click the anti-skid to arm it. And then you can move back over with Shift and A, and then Shift and spacebar to recenter yourself in the pilot seat. Mission computer. Initializing the mission computer. This is the pain in the butt part, so we'll do the mission computer after we get everything set up. FCS actuator panel to EFCS. So this is EFCS. If we hold over it, EFCS, EFCS, and EFCS. So that one is good. Again, mission computer data, basically saying to input stuff. We're not going to do that yet. Fuel pump. These are, this whole thing of nonsense is all of your fuel. So you have fuel pump 1, fuel pump 2, fuel pump 3, and fuel pump 4. Fuel pump 3 directly goes to the APU, which is your auxiliary power unit, which you need to start to be able to start the engine. So now we're providing fuel to the fuel that goes to the APU. That one's good. APU starter. This is your whole entire, as you see on the left, it says APU. This is all the stuff that you have with your APU. You can put it in run position, and it does a little flick, like if you hold it and move up again from the run position, it does a little flick. But you'll see the RPM start moving up, right? That's where you're really looking for, is looking at that RPM, and that means that the APU is started. APU generator. It is here. Do not turn this on yet, okay? You're going to need to wait for a little bit for the APU RPM to start up, and then this thing will say available. Alright, now that it's showing available, we can turn this APU power generator to on, and now it's saying that it is in use. We're good to go there. Then the hydraulic pumps 2 and 3 to on. As it says, this is aux and aux, so it means auxiliary, which we are on auxiliary power. So we're going to do system 2 and system 3, and you can see that the pressure for the PSI is moving up to 3,850 PSI. Another thing, it may be later down in the list on this, but another thing you want to do is you want to take off that external generator power. Yeah, because this is in use for your power. So you do want two things in use. So you're going to turn this to off, meaning that your external power is available, but you're not using it, whereas your APU power is available and you are using your APU power. So, next things next, we're going to go over to this little computer and we're going to hit this little button, and that's going to showcase everything. So, what you can do on this side is you can look at your services, you can click it to see your total fuel, so we have a good amount of fuel, and you can take a look to see your payload. We currently don't have a payload at the moment, but what we're going to do is go over to services, and we're in the Loadmaster checklist. So set Loadmaster computer to on. That's pretty much what this is. You can go to the actual Loadmaster area, but I don't know how to get there with the button stuff. Open cargo door as required. So we are going to click cargo door. Then we see that the ramp is up. We are going to put the ramp down. Okay. Then we're going to do our payload, and we're going to put in, let's put in a couple of presidential limos, right? And as it shows here, we are well within parameters for normal flight. These red would be maxing out. If it's anywhere in the blue, then that means that we are good. If it's lower than the blue, then that means that, you know, we have better maneuverability. But for normal flight, that blue dot is within the blue, meaning that we are good. CG and takeoff weight is good. Takeoff weight, we're at 477 pounds out of 585 pounds for the takeoff weight, because this is the current takeoff weight. Maximum takeoff weight is 585 pounds. Gonna go back to services. We're going to put our ramp up. And then we are going to close our cargo door. Alright, so that's all closed. Before starting engines, set for the comm radio, again we'll get to that. APU and external equipment as required, we already have that running. Parking brake we already know is on. The WAP display, still showing a bunch of stuff. Doesn't matter. Fuel quantity, we looked at those were good. Fuel boost pumps, that's what we want to do. So we already turned on number 3 for the APU, but we need to put on the fuel for engine 1, engine 2, and engine 3. And it has fuel for the forward side of the engine and then the aft side of the engine, which is the forward and the back side of the engine. Next, to starting the engine. So MFDs 2 and 3 to engine start. That's the multi-function display. So as we go into here, you're going to go to engine. This is your first engine page. Then we're going to click here, second engine page. You can distinguish them by the red being on the engine oil page, and then this is your normal setup. That one's good. APU bleed air. So we're going to turn on the APU bleed air. This is going to send air from the APU to the engines to get them to rotate. Supply pressure PSI is going good on there. Good. Nav lights. We want to turn the nav light on. Anti-collision light, we're going to put it to fuselage / wing. That's what that means. This one can be kind of a pain. You grab it and drag it to the right. Sometimes it doesn't want to drag to the right. There we go. Engine ignition selector A/B. If you click it, nothing comes up. So again, engine ignition, you don't want to be doing A, you don't want to be doing B, you want to be going over to the far right that says A, B. There you go. Throttles. Set throttles to idle. I know for mine that my throttles are in idle because they are bound. So my throttles are all the way back. Bleed supply. Check the air bleed supply. Bleed engine feed is on. And now you have air going to the engines. Shutoff valve for engine 1. You're going to move it to the top, which means that it is on. And then to start engine, you're going to click this little plug. It's going to light up. And if we look at our PFD, which is the primary flight display, or at least the engine on the multi-function display, or MFD, I guess you could say, you're going to see these starting to rotate up. This takes a while. You're waiting for this line to connect with the outer line on each one of these, and for everything to show in green. So it's going to take a minute for engine 1 to kind of come up. Same thing with the engine oil. We already see this one's in green. This is in green. We're waiting for the engine oil to kind of go from red to green. Alrighty, everything is in green, so we saw engine 1 is good. We're going to look at the shutoff valve for engine 4. So we're going to turn the shutoff valve for engine 4 on. We don't need this starter because that's kind of like turning the key in your car. You don't want to keep leaving it on, so we're going to turn it off because the engines are already on. Shutoff valve for engine 4 is good. Pulling the plug for the starter for engine 4. We're going to recenter, take a look at our multifunction display. Engine 4 is at the very far right, same thing as the one on this. And we're going to do the same thing and wait for engine 4 to get up to speed. So, engine 4 is running good. I'm just going to click the look at button to see these. Engine 2. Turn it on. Turn engine 4 starter off. And as you can see for our WAS, we have anti-ice, IFF mode, Gen 1, 2 off, Gen 3, 4 off, engine oil pressure 3 is bad, engine oil pressure for 1 and 2 is bad, hydraulic pressure, engine 2 and 3 is currently failed, now it's engine 3 is failed, we do have the parking brake, APU power in use, APU, and then we do not have probe heat on. So those are all of our warning messages. So now we have engine 2 fully started. So let's go back up to looking at these. Engine 2 is fully started. We're going to start engine 3, and we're going to turn off the starter for engine 2. Again, as you kind of go through the checklist, all of these, warning indicators and stuff like that are going to turn off. Besides the anti-ice and then the IFF mode, those will still be on. The IFF is pretty much military code for viewing friendlies in the area. It's just going to turn off by itself. Engine 3 has started, so we're going to turn off the starter on that one. APU bleed air is next. We are going to be turning off the APU bleed air because we do not need it anymore. And we're going to set the packs of left and right to on. Engine anti-ice, again, these are the engine anti-ice, and currently those are all off. We don't really need them. Probe heat switch lights on below 6 degrees Celsius. So let's take a look for Norfolk, or not Norfolk, sorry. On or below 6 degrees Celsius. It is at 6 degrees Celsius. But it says on below 6 degrees Celsius. So since we're at 6 degrees Celsius, we don't really need the probe heat on. But to kind of turn that ICAW off, we're going to turn the probe heat on, and that ICAW has now gone off. Left and right, you know, wing, I guess we can just set it to normal for the anti-ice. Hydraulic pressure. So these are all the hydraulic pressure, right? So you're going to be turning pressure on for everything. That one's already on. That's on. Boom. Engine 1, Engine 2, Engine 3, and Engine 4 are now providing all hydraulic pressure, and they should all be relatively at 4,000 psi. Maybe some of them are a little bit lower, but who cares? So that one's good. Before taxi, DC X tie switch, we know that is in auto. Hydraulic transfer pump is showing as auto. Flaps, basically for full movement, I have my flaps set up. So let's go over to the configuration page. And what we're going to do is we're going to put down flaps 1. This one still says flaps up, even though it's kind of at a quarter flaps down. The next thing that you're going to do is flaps down again, and that's flaps half. You're going to see the green coming down on it. Then you're going to go down again, flaps 3/4, and yes, I have the flaps bound to my HOTAS, so you should probably bind the flaps to your HOTAS. And flaps full. So we've realized that the flaps have full range. I'm going to go up, which for mine I have it bound where it will just automatically go up. So flaps are good. Flight control system check. So, going to move left. All right, so that one's good. Right, that one's good. Up, there we go. Down, and good. Left or right rudder. Left rudder. Neutral rudder. We see our gear is down and our brake temperatures are all at 19. That one's good. APU generator. We are going to turn the APU generator off because we don't need it. APU is we're going to set it to off. We're going to turn the generators for the normal generators on. I don't know why it doesn't kind of say that. That's kind of something that will be a little bit interesting. So this is, again, engine 1, engine 2, engine 3, and engine 4. You're turning the generators on, so the engines are providing you power instead of the APU. Standby engine select to EPR. What you're going to do on this one is this knob over here. It's currently showing as N2. You kind of just, you know, scroll wheel it in different directions until it says EPR. And over here it says max. You can change the maximum performance, intermediate performance, maximum continuous thrust performance, derated performance, or manually selected EPR mode. What those do, if I go into the normal engine page, these are your EPRs, right? It's showing max currently with those two lines. If I set it to intermediate, now it's going to show that the limit is 1.44. If I do maximum continuous thrust, which we will be using in flying because we are doing continuous thrust in flight, the limit is 1.36. If we go down to derated, you're at 1.22, and we're not going to do anything with the manually selected mode. But for takeoff, we're going to do the maximum EPR mode because that just makes sense to me. You're going to leave this screen up. I typically like to have it over here, and then what I like to have over here is my navigation display. So I'm looking at my engine, my navigation, and then my primary flight display over here. Thrust rating, as we said, set thrust rating to max. DRT or manual is required. We set it to max. Stabilize rudder trim and set it to 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to look over to here. Rudder trim is set to 0, so that one is good. Altimeters. Again, this is your altimeter right here. It is 2992. Again, if you go over to your flight planner, we don't really have any air pressure on this one. It typically would show what the altimeter is. QNH 3008. I don't know if it shows the QNH here. So QNH is pretty much your altimeter. So we know it's at 3008. So let's go ahead and set that. 3008. And that's showing in inches mercury there. So that one's good. Altimeter has been set. Close doors. So we've already closed those 2 doors. Making sure that the crew door is also closed, which it is. Because if we did this, then the crew door would open, and it shows in yellow of it being open. But we don't want it to be open, so we're going to close it. Check hydraulic temperatures. Again, you can kind of check the hydro temps on this one. You're really looking at the PSI on this one. The temperatures are roughly decent. WAP displays. Good old WAP. Parking brake is on. Anti-ice, you're never going to get rid of it. IFF mode is basically going to go away as we start moving. So that one's good to go. All right. The main nonsense. All right. So I'm going to move over here a bit. And I'm going to view down. So, we have this whole entire database. Both of them do kind of the same thing. I don't really like using the bottom side because the bottom one doesn't really do things correctly. So, what you do is at the top one, POS init. You're going to hit the little button to the right of that. Before you go anywhere else, you're going to see set POS to GINS, which is your global navigation, right? You're going to go up to here where that little icon is. You're going to click enter, and it's going to say complete. Now you're going to go to your flight plan. With your flight plan, the origin is KLFI, distance 624 nautical miles, destination is KPAM. Now, you can put in the flight number, doesn't really matter. We do have Nancy via direct to Nancy, right? So that one's good. You're not really going to do the perform init or anything along those lines. As you scroll down, there is a discontinuity right here. Okay? You don't want discontinuity. So, you're going to click to the left, which is going to copy this line here, and then you're going to click above it to clear the discontinuity. Or at least you should. Maybe it's here. Oh, my bad. Let's see. So this one is forward and aft screen switch. Most of the time it's in the aft screen. I click the button to change it to the forward screen. So we got that there. We'll leave that discontinuity alone for the moment. And what we're going to do is, now that we switch the screen to our top screen, right, we are going to do departure and arrival. Departures, none. There are no departures. We are departing runway 08. So we're going to click runway 08. Okay, so that one's good. Then, instead of looking at the legs or doing anything there, go back to here. for the departure or arrivals button. You see the departures. You see the arrivals. If you click this arrival button, nothing's going to happen. Okay, Pam. We are going to hit this arrival button. So, we know we're going into KPAM. It doesn't have any stars. It does have an ILS Zulu for 14 left, which we had put in. We can either select vectors, Nancy, SP, SLH, or Splash, right? We are going to Nancy. So we've now put in Nancy. Now what we're going to do is hit this button that says execute. Now everything we've put in has been executed. Now we are going to go to the legs. Okay? Now that we go to the legs, you need to scroll through all the pages or something, you know, stuff won't happen, right? So you're going to go here. Look at that. There's a discontinuity. If there are any discontinuities on this, things will not work properly. So like we were talking about before, you're going to left click on the Nancy here, and you're going to left click up here. That's going to get rid of the discontinuity and basically say that we're going to Nancy. Then we're going to go down again, make sure there's no other discontinuities, and then we are going to go down and hit execute. So, we've now hit execute on that side. Let's see. Progress. So runway 08 to Nancy, Buto, KPAM, navigation, Gens 1. So that one's all good. We should be seeing something. So let's take a look at our PPI, and there we go. Now we actually have a magenta line on the PPI, and for the navigation, I'll show you guys on this one. This knob all the way back here is your map range. So you have 40. If you scroll up, 80, 160, and 320. So that's your range of your map. Doesn't really change much on this side. Now we can go to here. If you go to the PPI, shows your range is 320. I can shorten it down to 40, and it will now show my range as 40. Same thing is on this navigation setup, it is showing as 40. So, we are good to go there. If you do any of these steps wrong, it's going to F up the whole entire thing. Now, on this one, altitude reference selector, you're going to go, I guess MKR is decent. It is off of barometric pressure. And we're basically going to tune this to 1,000 feet above the current elevation of the airport, which is 13 feet. So we're going to start scrolling this knob. 1,020 feet. So that one's good. Now, underneath here, you can do this switch to on. Kind of does like threat detection and stuff like that. Now, on here, what you're looking at is your aircraft reference position selector, right? So if we go over to the navigational aid, we go up. It's a little bit farther out, right? So it's a little bit farther out. If we go down, then it kind of moves it closer in. But now we know for our navigation that we can kind of see a little bit more of where we're going. Some people like to have it is, you know, cut off at the aircraft. I kind of like to have it like this. Next thing's next. There's a lot of things on here. Navigational display radar. If I turn that on, there we go. So now we can kind of see where we are at in relativity to everything. I don't really like that because it's a little bit intense to see all that. I wish you could see like rather weather and everything, but doesn't. And those ones are inoperable. We're just going to keep running down the list. So, mission computer has been set and messed around with. Set taxi to 40% N1 max. Right? So this is your percentage. You are not going to be at 40%. You're maybe going to be, I found a good speed is like 27.5 for the speed on that one. What we're going to go up to here is our taxi lights, which taxi lights set to taxi. Those ones are all external, so those are good. Minimum use of brakes, thrust reversers, avoid cycling for them. And we're going to do the pre-flight takeoff a little bit later. So right underneath your backspace, there's kind of the slash key. That will bring up your comms. So you don't have to worry about inputting anything into your comms. If I do this, tune Langley, 118.85. Request IFR clearance.
Langley clearance delivery RSH 17 Uniform Bravo Uniform 4510 Heavy IFR. To Tyndall ready to copy.
Now, the only annoying part about this that hasn't been fixed is that I do not hear anything that they say. It types it,
Clear to Tyndall as
it just doesn't talk it.
Maintain FL210. Departure frequency is 1 tree 2. 55 squawk 271 tree RSH 17 Uniform Bravo Uniform 4510 Heavy.
Contact ground on 121.7 when ready. To taxi. Good day. So, tune Langley ground. Immediately goes to 121.7. Request taxi IFR.
17 Uniform Bravo Uniform 4510 Heavy ready to taxi IFR.
Taxi 2 and hold short of runway 08 using taxiway Alpha. Contact tower on 125.0 when ready. Acknowledge taxi clearance.
Taxiing hold short runway 08 using taxiway Alpha RSH 17 Uniform Bravo Uniform 4510 Heavy.
Alright, so we're not going to tune Langley Tower just yet. We're going to taxi to runway 8. So again, underneath the backspace button, that little slash button, we're going to click that. Our comms is going to go away. We're going to remove the parking brake. And now we're going to push in very, very gently. Alright, we are now at runway 08, cutting throttles, and braking for the stop and hold, which is that line with the dots on top of it. You want to be stopped beforehand. So, now we're going to go to here, before takeoff, brakes, steering, that's good. Flight instruments, we already did that. Probe heat is already good. Fuel pumps are all on. Good to go. WAP display just shows the anti-ice now, right? It got rid of that IFF mode. Slats and flaps. Set slats / flaps to extended flaps half and confirm index. So, we're going to go to the configuration page. I'm going to put flaps down 1, flaps down 2. So, flaps, half, index, 80. This index is showing 49. And it is what it is. I'm going to go up to the PPI. Oh, there you go. Nav is now there, and it is still showing the CDI needle, so that one's good. We'll stay in kind of nav mode. Good. Hydraulic temperatures we saw were good. Exterior lights are good. And setting landing lights to landing. Good. Takeoff brakes. Takeoff thrust. Set takeoff thrust to max EPR. Yep. Brakes must be released. Rotate to 12 degrees. Packs are already on, so pressurization is good. Landing gear and lights out, those will be all good. So let's go back. Comms, tune Langley Tower, 125.0 without even turning any knobs. And request takeoff clearance IFR from Langley Tower.
Langley Tower, R-Sage, 17 Uniform Bravo Uniform 4510 Heavy ready for IFR departure runway 08.
29er 2. Clear for runway. Acknowledge takeoff.
Clear for takeoff runway 08, R-Sage, 17 Uniform Bravo Uniform 4510 Heavy.
Now for the altitude, I want to put my initial altitude at roughly around say 5,000. Now, we'll kind of go over all this nonsense. So, display on both of these sides. MSN is basically your navigation, your normal navigation. You do have VOR and ILS, so VOR/ILS, and typically you'll have it on the 2 section on that one. We'll talk about that when we start doing the ILS landing. So you have a maximum bank, which is the standard, or you can do normal, or you can do 20 degrees. You can change this between Mach and indicated airspeed. I like the indicated airspeed, and we're going to do the thrust as 250. That thrust pitch is inoperable. Autopilot EPR mode. Speed hold mode. That basically, engage/disengage the autopilot speed hold mode to hold a specific speed. Autopilot speed nav mode is inoperable. Heading hold, which will select our heading as runway for 080 magnetic. LNAV. LNAV is going to be your normal navigation for it to go off of that magenta line. You can do an altitude hold mode to hold at that altitude mode. VNAV is inoperable, so nothing will happen if you do the vertical navigation, weirdly enough. Autopilot turbulent mode, or whatever it is also inoperable. The split axis is where you toggle your vertical speed mode. That's where you toggle for your vertical speed. Again, I've had problems with the auto throttle that it just doesn't work well. It is what it is, right? Next, if we go over to here, this is your approach path, right? Now you can do the approach path selector switch. I really don't know what all this kind of does. Ground spoiler lapse rate, maybe. And then you have an armed mode, right? And then it is set to Cat 1, which we are going to be in Category 1 for it. And then the approach path, we'll kind of, look at this now. Right? So we saw for this, we're going to be on Cat 1. And the approach path, or the glide slope, is going to be 2.5 degrees. So 2.5 And all of these, as you hold it, it says inoperable, inoperable, and inoperable. So all these are inoperable. So you're just doing the approach path as 2.5. The display, pilot's flight director switch, inoperable. Approach mode, you'll be clicking this. This is something to do with the barometric pressures, which we're not going to deal with. Declutter pilot's HUD. And then the airdrop mode, which is not on there. Pilot's flight director switch. Enable pilot flight director. That FD, yeah. Alright, cool. So, we've kind of talked about everything there. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to roll onto the runway. Then what we're going to do, what most of the time they kind of recommend, is to kind of get it to 1.1 and stabilize it at 1.1. And then what we're going to do is we're going to push it up. To the line. Gonna get back on center line. Now on this primary flight display down here, you're going to be seeing the numbers go up. It's a little bit easier than trying to look at the HUD and all the nonsense there. So we're pretty much going to be rotating out at roughly around 120, 130. Maybe even a little bit at 140. Come on, baby, you can pull up. So it's saying that my flaps are bad. Makes sense. Gonna retract the landing gear. So they're saying we need to contact Washington.
C-17 Uniform Bravo Uniform 4510 Heavy.
We're going to pitch the nose trim up to about 15.
Washington Center RSH 17 Uniform Bravo Uniform 4510 Heavy is passing 900 feet, climbing FL210.
Cool. They're saying that I can continue. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get on my course path. Now it's going to set me up on this line here. Cool. So those exterior lights are good. And we're going to set this to the maximum continuous thrust. Now we'll see if this thing actually does what it's supposed to be doing. So the autopilot, we've set it at 5,000 feet, and it's blown right past it. So we do see that we are in roll select mode. So we're going to switch LNAV to MSN mode. So we are now in MSN mode there. What we're going to do is we're going to continue climbing. It did say flight level 21, so we're going to go flight level 21. Now, let's take a look if we do the auto throttle and see what kind of mess we get going on with this. It does say that the auto throttle is active. Again, it is not really setting anything for our database or anything like that. RCH heavy.
12 tree. 85 RCH 17 uniform Bravo uniform 4510 heavy. Washington Center RCH 17 uniform Bravo uniform 4510 heavy is at 6,100 feet climbing FL 210.
Yep, I'm already at 29902, so that one's good. And they're telling me to continue. So, that one's all good to go. Around 21,000. And what we're going to do on this side is we're going to increase the throttle to roughly around 285. And maybe I need to set it, so we're gonna hold here, hit that to set for the 285. There we go. So you do have to set it, which is a weird setup. So
Jacksonville Center RCH 17 uniform Bravo uniform 4510 heavy. Request 11,000 feet. Descend and maintain 11,000 feet RCH 17 uniform Bravo uniform 4510 heavy.
Alright, so now we're going to descend at roughly around 285 knots down to 11,000 feet. So we are starting our descent now because I am making my turn towards Ares. Hands free. I'm not touching nothing. Literally all of this is just the autopilot. So, I mean, it is, you know, very simplistic, but at the same time, not too bad. So left click and then right click to set for 1600. Setting up for 180. Alright, Localizer 1 is tracking. So, now that we hit the approach button, Localizer 1 is currently tracking on that side. We can set up our auto throttle. Landing gear coming down. Flaps are full this time. And we are on approach. As you can see, it says Lock 1 track, which means we are tracking the localizer. Now, on this one, it does tend to kind of lean us a lot more to the right than what it should be for some odd reason.
500, 450, 400, auto throttle,
We'll turn the auto throttle off.
300, 250, 250, 200, 150, 150, 150, 100, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. Autopilot. Autopilot.
And on that one, I set the reverse thrust, and then with the reverse thrust, once it's active, you basically push it full forward. But again, on this one, for whatever reason, yeah, spoiler switch doesn't show anything, exterior lights, cargo ramp, engines, you kind of just keep following the checklist after the landing. It won't go through all that kind of stuff, and then you can do the shutdown process as well. If you do need to find your route, so airport ground chart for Tyndall, so we can switch to that. And then as we can kind of see, hopefully it will let us see. That's the facility chart. There it is. Airport ground chart. So we landed on 14 left. We're kind of down here on this one. And there's taxiway Alpha. It states there. Now this one may be outdated, but it looks like we're, you know, roughly on Foxtrot. So pushing the speed, and again it did say landing gear malfunction and all that kind of stuff. So we may not even have enough speed to kind of get us up and running, but at least you can kind of tell from everything how it all works. Again, the localizer, for some odd reason, I don't know what it means by the I mean, we can try and look at it. It doesn't show it. Full flaps, and then to FPV set to -1 to -1.5 degrees and 240 feet per minute, right? So I guess on this one it basically means, like, you know, down by 240, but you can't really control that. And then there's no like -1 or anything like that. Maybe they're talking about the approach flight path. It should be about 2.4. Or maybe they're talking about that the approach flight path should be like 1.0 to 1.5. I'm not sure. If anybody knows what those things are, you can kind of give me some advice, kind of let me know. But yeah, that's pretty much everything with the C-17. And again, as you get close to the runway, instead of letting it, you know, fly itself, you can kind of, right before landing, you know, turn off the autopilot, and then the autopilot and the auto throttle, and then just kind of land it yourself, because your landings will probably be better. So, limit speeds. Let's see if they got anything in these limit speeds. They do. Landing gear down, limit speed is 250. Landing gear extended is 250. Slats extended is 280. Flaps half is 250. Flaps 3/4 is around 190. And flaps full is around 175 for your knots. So, but hopefully you enjoyed this video. I know it's a huge, in-depth kind of video, but hopefully it gave you a little bit to think about, and you know, a couple of things there. So, cool. Hope to see you guys next time. Peace.